If you take the people that are good with their finances and the people that are bad with their finances, what would you say are the main traits that distinguish those who are financially responsible and irresponsible?
Yeah. So the first one I would say is discipline.
Yep.
Generally speaking, those that are financially on the right side of the equation tend to be more disciplined, and in all walks of their finances. They understand on living less than they make. They don't like fall into consumer traps. They know that kind of stuff. But the other like big differentiator is I think the people that end up staying in a sound financial place, they really understand the emotions of fear and greed. And they understand how to recognize when they're being too fearful or too greedy. We even see this all the time. And it's a mistake that we see a lot of times. A lot of things seem like they're sort of insignificant, right? Like, oh, I'm going to sign this personal guarantee. It's insignificant or probably never happen. And then you hear this horror story of that happening. Or someone say, hey, you know what? I'm going to claim a deduction on my taxes for this thing, or I'm going to implement this tax strategy. We actually have this going on now where folks that did some like very, very aggressive tax strategies around conservation easements are now being called to the table, and they're now having to pay back years, hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax benefit that they took along with interest and penalties. And so it's understanding it's okay to be fearful when others are greedy, and it's okay to be greedy when others are fearful, but it's never okay to be too fearful or too greedy. And if you fall in that camp, you often get yourself to a really bad spot.
What makes me sad about some like these conservation easements is a good example, is every decade, because you think about oil and gas, partnerships, and every decade seems like they have situations where even the advisors who are supposed to keep you safe, the attorneys, the accountants, they fall into the scope and prey to this as well, because they get all frothy and excited because they usually are getting a cut. And so, whenever you get the money involved, it changes motivations.
Yeah.
And so we knew a lot of CPAs that were out there pushing this stuff because they were profitable, but it never passed the sniff test.
Can you explain exactly what these are? Conservation easements, oil and gas, and the recent one that we've been hearing a lot is investing in movies.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
I was
film
trying
credits,
to I was trying to get to the
film
bottom of this.
credits are investing, because film credits are different than the actual investments.
Is it film credits?
I don't know.
I don't know,
We're
yeah.
from the state of Georgia,
Sure.
and it's not uncommon. By the way, it used to be even better. Film credits used to, because realize these film industry gets so many credits from the states because they're trying to incentivize these films to be, filmed in their state because it's very competitive.
Creates tons of jobs.
Creates jobs, a lot of economic stuff. So it's not uncommon that they have so many credits for making these movies that they sell the credits out on the market, and this is all completely legal. And usually I've seen that it's changed over the years. Last time I was buying credits, I think I was getting a 5 to 6% discount. So yeah, you instead of paying dollar for dollar on your taxes, you pay 95 cents on a dollar. And if you're paying enough in taxes, that 5% delta can be a pretty good thing. That's not necessarily a scam. You might be thinking about private placements or people investing in films, because we've dealt with that too. Those are like most things. They could turn out great, or they could be moonshots and they could turn out bad. But conservation easements, because that was your initial question. What these things were doing back in the day when they came on the scene is that part of the tax provision was you could go take property, put together a group of people, and then you would put it in a conservation. And the government
would of like raw undeveloped
land. And then what was in the brochure is that the government is going to allow you to take the best use of this property. And since you're putting in an easement, we'll give you the tax deduction, like a charitable contribution, for this higher value. So it wasn't uncommon that you'd see people putting $100,000, meaning an investor would put $100,000 in a conservation easement, but then take a $400,000 charitable deduction on their taxes. You quickly probably are doing the math in your head, and you're going, wait a minute. That means they're getting a bigger tax benefit than even what they economically put into the deal. But they were leaning very heavily on that the government was giving you a deduction on the best use. So they would go put together, they would have all these consultants who would go do all this analysis, create these packages of paper, supposedly be all protected, where they'd have attorneys and accountants. And they said, no, this property, we could put apartments here. We could put, all kind of crazy made up, meanwhile, it's just land.
Or it's swampland or watershed land that you can't actually develop on. And they were saying you can.
You can imagine the IRS has had an issue with this, and they've now the chickens have come home to roost, and they're now going after a lot of these deals and making people pay back. The deals we're kind of having to look at for some clients that kind of did these things is you have to pay the
taxes you owe.
You get to take the charitable contribution on what you put in, but you're having to pay taxes and then a 10% penalty.
So what are the worst things to do on your taxes?
Lie would be a real big one. Don't do that, right? Like if you actually have something on your taxes, don't try to not report income that you had, right? Like if you had income, make sure you report it. And then be careful taking all these crazy deductions. We'll see people who say, oh, well, I went and bought the Range Rover because I need it for my business. And you're like, okay, well, what business are you in? Oh, well, I work from home. Oh, okay, well, do you go see clients? No, no, no. And you start going down this line. They're like, well, that's not a justifiable business expense. You don't actually operate in a business where that should have been deductible. So you see people getting super, super gray or even spinning up businesses that aren't actually businesses at all. They're just things that they're running expenses through, trying to create losses. Well, if those losses are material and you don't actually have a profitable business, then that's not a business. It's a hobby, and you're not going to be able to deduct those things. So people who get so aggressive doing that, so aggressive trying to reduce their tax bill illegitimately, that's the big thing that you don't want to do on your taxes.
I look at it in terms of like big mistakes that I see. Honesty is a big part of it. I mean, because I will tell you, I used to work in public accounting. I've represented clients before the IRS before, and working with clients on audits is one of the most humbling things out there because you're scared to death. I mean, and that's why, let me give some general advice. If you ever get a full audit, I'm not talking about just a letter sent to you. I'm talking about, the agent actually wants to come down and see your business or see the property or whatever. You don't represent yourself. If you represent yourself, you're in a heck of a situation because the agent can ask you any question and you're supposed to answer because you're the taxpayer. If you hire somebody, please hire somebody. I would hire somebody for myself. Is because if they ask a question of your attorney or your CPA that's representing you, if they don't know the answer, they're going to say, I'm going to have to go back to my client and ask the question. And it stops the question right there for follow-up later. But if you don't answer it, you can imagine that looks shady. And audits can mushroom. They go 3 years back unless they find fraud, then they can go even further. But they can mushroom from your business to your personal taxes and all kind of other. So you're in a very dangerous situation. And that's why I always tell people, be honest on your taxes. I mean, I'm all about maximizing deductions, but don't do it so gray or so shady that as soon as you get the notice that you're under an audit, that you start crying. I mean, that's the situation because they can take your stuff. I mean, very few things do you have to worry about just straight up your ability to function anymore. That's why we are always nervous. IRS, SEC, other things. We want to be as compliant as possible because they take away your ability to do business,
away your livelihood,
and your livelihood. So you need to take that with seriousness. Now, let's take away the scare stuff. I do think most people, if you're a business owner and you start having success, really do spend some time understanding business structure. That's a big no-brainer because there's ways you structure your business in a really good way that legally and honestly can have some long-term benefits. I also tell people that I would focus on all the different, like real estate. At some point, if you have enough success that you're even going, we always talk about step 8 of the financial order of operations. Like we own commercial real estate. I think anybody who's like a service provider, like a dentist, an attorney, a CPA, at some point, you're probably going to want to buy the building that you have your business. It's crazy to pay rent to somebody when you can go buy your own building and then you pay yourself rent. You do cost segregation, take accelerated depreciation. There's all kind of cool things. That's all completely legal. But if you don't know how this stuff works, you don't know how to maximize those opportunities.